My name is Willy Bolander. I study influence, persuasion, and leadership in selling and sales management, and I teach people how to sell. In this podcast, we'll talk to some of the world's top sales leaders and see what we can learn from them. Welcome to the Sales Lab. Hello, welcome to part 2 of our conversation with Stephen Topel from Marsh McLennan, and we are picking up our conversation where we left off. We're going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is internal selling, that is navigating within your own organization and how that can help you perform better. Hope you get something out of it.
Yeah, Willie, and it's so much harder today than it was just a couple of years ago pre-COVID. You know, if you think of my company, for example, it used to be we were all in the office. Right? Now, salespeople are supposed to be out and about, but the office was the central hub. And so if you were a young professional developing, you had a question, you just plop into someone's workstation or office and just ask it. Well, now in the dispersed workforce environment that we're in right now, where people are working from wherever, if it's not on your schedule, it doesn't happen, right? You know, because you're so busy, you're so heads down on what you're doing. You're in your own world, and someone just can't shout over from the other cubicle, I got a question for you, you got a minute. And so I talked to our young people, in fact, we had a meeting yesterday, about one of their most important jobs is to be aggressive and not sit back and wait for someone to tap them on the shoulder. They need to be reaching out and, in a sense, selling internally, reaching out to people that they don't see every day and asking them to go out for a cup of coffee, asking them to have lunch, asking them to take them on one of their meetings. There's a higher burden today in this more remote-driven environment for sales, or I think any young person going into a career, right, to learn their trade. It's going to take that kind of gumption and, you know, intestinal fortitude to say, okay, I'm going to reach into someone's world and ask them to help me, because they're not going to remember me because they don't see me, right? And I think that's something I work on constantly with young professionals, whether they're sales or not, in understanding that they have that additional burden.
And so I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is one of the focal areas where I do my research, is on these internal relationships as drivers of performance effectiveness, and, you know, finding ways that the people you know inside your own firm benefit your performance, controlling for the customers you called on and your efforts with customers, you know, that these relationships can be a multiplier of your effectiveness. Right. But does that mean that you guys are entirely, do you guys have any interaction in the office, or is it entirely dispersed at this point?
No, we are, but our workforce is, you know, you get to choose where you want to work. Right. And going back to the economic conditions that our industry's in other words, there's a talent gap. I think that we've made decisions to allow maximum flexibility. And knowledge workers, I mean, this is true. And I think I worry about a lot of things about this, but knowledge workers, more than ever, COVID has shown that knowledge workers can work from anywhere, and that it's not mandatory to be in the office. Now, I worry about a lot of things about this. One of the things I definitely worry about is company culture, colleague engagement, and how do young people grow in their careers. So these are the, you know, the yin and the yang of the post-pandemic. But, you know, I have in our team here 375 people, and on any given day, maybe 15 to 20% of the team is in one of our offices, as compared to probably back in the day, it was 65 to 70% of our team was in one of the offices on any given day. Still trying to figure that all out, right? Still trying to navigate that all. But as I like to tell our young sales professionals, I say to them, look, you know, this is not unique to us. It's like everybody, but it's an 80-20 proposition, right? There's so much in life that's 80-20, right? And in order to be successful, you, the young, talented person, have to bring 100% of the 80. And we as the organization have to bring 100% of the 20. And part of that 80 that I talk about is this idea of, you know what, you have to be resourceful. You need to be willing to pick up the phone and not just call a prospect to ask them to take a meeting, but call one of your fellow coworkers to take a meeting with you so you can learn and develop your career skills. And I would have said a couple of years ago that yes, that was always the case. You needed to engage with people, but it's much more difficult today than it was a couple of years ago. So it puts an added burden.
Well, and I can't agree more with part of what you just said. Not that I disagree with part of what you just said, but highlighting part of what you just said, in that from a developmental standpoint, if I'm a new salesperson, you want a flexible work schedule. You want to be able to work from where that's fine, but don't you want to grow? Don't you want to learn? Don't you want to be ahead of the other people that were hired in your cohort? Don't you want to be not just marginally successful, but exceptionally successful? And I think a lot of people that go into sales roles do, but I wonder if they make that connection between, okay, part of that is I have to be, would I be more comfortable at home? Sure. So what?
They don't get that.
How are you going to grow at home?
Yeah, the young people, the young new in the business, not validated yet financially, don't get that option. They're in the office.
That's good.
Unless they're out at a meeting. So, but it's more their interaction with other people who used to be in the office who are not in the office now. I agree. I mean, so, in order to be successful at developing new talent in our industry, there has to be a lot of FaceTime attention, right? That's training programs, that's one-to-ones, that's group meetings, that's, role playing. I mean, there's all sorts of things. Like yesterday, I had our newest class of sales trainees, and we were doing role playing at 4:00 in the afternoon for an hour. And we were role playing the first 60 seconds of a research meeting. That's all, first 60 seconds. And so for an hour, we went around and around and around and helped each other and critiqued each other and challenged each other, to make adjustments. So yeah, that kind of stuff you can't do over Zoom so easily. That stuff is not going to work while you're sitting in your apartment in your shorts and in a t-shirt. So it has to be in person and it has to be purposeful.
Yep, I agree. Walk me through somebody starting with your organization, the first 5 to 10 years of that trajectory. What are they doing? How do they transition into a new role, or do they just grow where they are? How does that all unfold?
Yeah. So let's assume someone who's graduating this spring. We'll use them as an example. We've hired, I think, 7. We're graduating this spring. They'll actually start with us in September. So we give them their summer, right? And whether it's travel or getting a part-time job or just in decompressing from being in college. So we start the Tuesday after Labor Day. We have an intensive 3-month initial training program that focuses in on business acumen and focuses in on an introduction to the various businesses that we have. Then after the 3 months, we ask them to choose which line of business their preference is, whether it's business insurance, employee health and benefits are the only 2 options in our program that we have. Once they choose that discipline, they're going to go into a split training mode where they're going to spend 50% of their time on sales training and actually starting to get some outbound contact and try to schedule some meetings, and 50% on technical learning, because this is a very technical profession. We're not a BD world. Like in the tech space, you might have BD folks who are reeling them in, and then you have the technical people. This is a combo field where you're technical as well as business development. So they enter into a more intensive 6-month technical training program where they're learning coverages, where they're learning insurance. At the same time, they're learning how to be effective at outbound calling, how to be effective at email strategy. And they have standards about how much activity they have to have on a weekly basis, both in their learning program and in their sales side of their program. And our goal during that next 6 months literally is to get to see what we learned after many years is a lot of people think they want to be in sales, and then they get into it and they realize, maybe not for me, right? Or I'm not good at it. And so by moving the sales part earlier into their career, it allows them to test it out. because maybe they're good, they love the insurance industry, but they're not going to be good at sales. It's not what they love. It's not what they're passionate about. They thought they were, but they're not. Well, there's other career paths within the firm to take them on a technical track or an operations track. So as they're going through this technical training and selling, their whole goal is to be an initiator. Can you open the door? Because we don't have to worry how to train you how to close if you can't open, right? So at the beginning, it's all about opening. So if you think of the first 5 years of the career, 8-9 months is more intensive training. There's not a lot of measurement other than can you open the door? And then as each meeting that you get, you're learning to do more and more of the meeting itself, right? You're challenged to do more and more. Our program does not allow them to go out on any meetings on their own. They go out with another senior person. And so the idea here is that you're going to learn best in the field, but you need to learn from a partner who says, okay, you're going to take the introduction and you're going to run with the story about MMA, and I'm going to deal with these other technical. And then changing as they go, each success. So in our world, there's financial validation and knowledge validation. Financial validation is a real simple equation. Once you're financially validated, which is 4 times whatever your salary is, you generate revenue that's 4 times your salary, you're financially validated, which means at that point in time, you're fully commissioned because you've covered your salary. But that can happen actually pretty easily when you think about it. If my job at the beginning is just to initiate a meeting, what if I called up your company, Willie, and you had a very large manufacturing company, and I got the first meeting, I brought out a partner to that meeting, and we all connected. And now all of a sudden there's a $300,000 revenue deal coming in the door, commission and fees, right? Not premium, but commission and fees. Well, I might financially validate really quickly. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about the business still.
Yeah.
That's the knowledge validation. So the goal is, yes, to financially validate a young salesperson, and that everybody's on their own journey, right? But they need to financially validate in their first 3 years with us. That's 36 months from hire date is our measure. You should be financially validated within that 36 months. Some people take the whole 36 months. Some people take 18 months, right? And then we really look at it and go, yes, we've hired a class of people and we have multiple classes of people going through this, but you're on your independent journey because you're going to pick different industries to specialize in. You're going to pick different things to focus in on. You're going to have a different trajectory on how successful you are and how early that is. If you make it to validation, right? If you make it to that hurdle, which is a big hurdle, right? Anything that has unlimited income potential is ridiculously hard. So, but then that's where you start to enter, as we were talking about earlier, that hockey stick period. You're starting to connect the dots. You're starting to kind of figure it out. You're building a network. The whole goal for anybody in my business is we call it prospecting your own book of business. In other words, not be having to do a lot of that outbound, colder type of interaction, but actually seeking targeted introductions from your clients. Mm-hmm. Leveraging centers of influence for introductions as well. So when you get to that point in your career, and everybody's on a different, trajectory of when they get there, but that's when you really arrive. That's when your business explodes, and you can go past $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million revenue book of business and be making a lot of money.
Yeah, the 36-month is interesting. What's your percentage in terms of people who are able to become validated in that time?
About 60%.
Okay. So still pretty tough, doable, but still pretty tough.
Yeah. And the 60% isn't that they're failing at validating, or the 40%. I think the industry average is under 50%. It's people deciding that there's a different pathway for them, and that's okay. Because I don't consider that failure in the model, right? If we go out and hire 7, 8 people, and let's say 4 end up validating, I'm a winner in that equation, right? But it's not that I'm hoping that 4 people don't make it. It's 4 people, especially when you're dealing with young people, are figuring out what's better for them.
Yeah.
We don't lose people to our competitors for the same role. We lose people that have decided, you know what, I really have a passion for technology. I want to get into the tech space. Or, you know what, sales isn't for me. I really want to get in the account management space. So now they're moving out of this program into a career development program that's about that. So I don't look at it as failure. I look at it as that should be what the promise of the program is all about, right?
There's always going to be a filtering function, right? I mean, especially at sales, because some people go into it because they want a career in it and they want to do it forever, and some people go into it because they're smart enough to know that's how you get in the door, and then you can maneuver outward, right? So once they're validated, they've been working, they're productive, everything's good. Do they tend to stay in those same roles, or at what point do they start moving into leadership like you?
Okay, so that's a great question because when you think of a career path for most careers, and in more traditional sales careers, I'm a salesperson, then I become a sales manager, then maybe I become the chief, sales officer or territorial manager, and then I become, so most of the people who go into insurance production look at it as their career path is graduating to more sophisticated accounts that pay more money, that allow me to earn more money, right? It's not uncommon for people to make high 6-figure, 7-figure incomes if they're successful at this business, right? So it's not a matter of most of those people, I would say 90+% of those, the successful ones, aspiring to be something else. They just aspire to be better at what they do.
Yeah.
Because they're an entrepreneur and they have their own business within a business.
They built it up, yeah.
They built it up. And that's to them. So they're the CEO of their own business in a sense. They have a team that works to support them. And that's what drives them. That's what they like. It is not an automatic that best salespeople are best sales leaders and managers. In fact, I would tell you that it's probably just the opposite. They tend to be the worst sales leaders and sales managers more times than not. And some of the best. And I happen to be one of those that made it successful and then got to be a CEO. And my journey was a little strange compared to most, right? But I would say that most people who are good at being in sales leadership in our business are people who didn't have all the 5 tools. They're great teachers or great coaches, but they may have been marginally successful as in production. So they might be the people who tend to be in the management roles, leading and developing other producers. But I think the best producers are the ones, the cream of the crop are about, they see it every day, right? Their numbers are growing. That's how they're getting rewarded. That's how they see it, right? So money is a way to keep score. I'm sorry to say, but it is what that meritocracy, like I was talking about.
Yep. You mentioned before we dove right in the very real observation that we have a lot of tech companies doing layoffs, a lot of industries, to borrow your terminology, that are maybe sexier than insurance, that are maybe flashier. They've got a basketball court in their corporate lobby and some ping pong tables, in the break room, and they bring in croissants for breakfast. And they do all these flashy, sexy things that are very effective at getting the attention of a certain demographic, and yet they're laying people off. So how is a young person supposed to interpret that? And what would you say to them to coax them over into insurance?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people we hire, end up comparing themselves to their friends that are in private equity or investment banking or even in tech sales, right? And a lot of those professions start out paying young people more money. And, something like private equity seems like so cool, right? Banking seems so cool compared to insurance. And what I tend to talk to people about is what's motivating them, right? What's driving them. So if it's income right out, having the biggest salary right out of graduating college, well, then we're probably not the right industry. But I would also say we know, right, that your fellow friends who are in the private equity space right now, who are making more money than you are initially, are working 100 hours a week as well. And so what's their lifestyle? Do they have work-life balance? Or are they beck and call, all the time? So, and then the reality is when I can show someone what the income career path trajectory is for someone who's successful, they are able to see that they can end up making more money than their friends that are taking other professions, right? So I have to first understand what motivates the individual, because I can't make a blanket statement.
Yeah.
To me, people who are going to do well in sales, money's always in the top 3 somewhere. Usually not number 1, but it's in the top 3. And if someone is completely non-money motivated, they're probably not going to be good at it. They're probably not going to love it. And if someone is overly money motivated, they may not choose what I have to offer because they're going to say they can make more initially. So we recruit a lot at Florida State, where you came from. And it was interesting because we're one of the sponsors of the sales program there. And our fellow companies that were sponsors, some of them had much bigger starting salaries. But we were recruiting cream of the crop sales major students.
Absolutely.
And I think the reason why was, one, the sophisticated sale that our business requires, right? It's not just a transaction. And the other thing is that the long-term career progression and income potential, where you can not only earn a good living, you can create wealth. So I think those are the types of things that we get into talking about. But when I'm in the classroom, when I'm talking to people who don't even know what we're about, I don't talk about my company. I talk about our industry. I really talk about, if you're intellectually curious, if you're driven to understand how businesses are put together. I'm appealing to the stuff on the curiosity side of people. And if I can get them to bite on the curiosity side, then I can talk to them. Then I get a shot to talk to them about my company and what we do, how we do it, and why potentially it's a good fit for them. But I have to first convince them that that insurance is not the get-go, right?
Yeah.
Something else.
Interesting. Yeah. You brought up curiosity a number of times, and I absolutely agree. And it's something that I think Anna Ostrowski brought up in a prior episode, that, it just makes a huge difference. You think about, you can teach somebody how to ask spin questions or, engage in a probing sequence in a sales process. But if they really don't care, that probably comes through. Okay, I'm asking these questions for theatrical purposes or because my boss told me to. I don't really care how you got here, or, you can walk me through your process from start to finish. You have to really want to know.
You do. And I think buyers, because everybody's time has now been, this has been going on in B2B sales for a long time, right? Used to be, when I was a young salesperson, I could call someone up and say, hey, I want to go out and get a round of golf, or, do whatever. And socialization, building relationships, through activities, was a much more major part of my sales process when I was younger. But going back far, but the recession of 1986 kind of started to change. Companies started to slim down their staffs, and people were much busier. And also, let's face it, people, when they have free time, want to spend it with their family and friends.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you have to earn that right to be their friend through doing good work on the business side, right? I don't think business gets done. Oh, we're friends, so therefore I'm going to get your business. That's not the way of the world anymore.
No.
So I think that people don't have time. Buyers don't have time to sit around and answer questions on things that are readily apparent and available through other means.
Oh, yeah.
Your questions, if you're going to ask questions, if you're going to do a research meeting, you better be bringing insight to the table. You better be bringing something and asking something that they go, oh, you're different than the other 9 schmoes that walked in the door here. You get my business a little more. You get my industry more. You are a student of what we're doing. And that needs to come across, or else that first meeting that is probably going to be your last meeting. So it's that intellectual curiosity is so big. And also the other thing I believe in is you have to know your why. It is the foundation of when you have crappy days, right? When people are hanging up the phone on you, when you can't get a meeting scheduled, when someone blew you off or someone yelled at you or whatever it is, you need to be able to lean back on your foundational why of what you're doing. And if you don't have that, so if you don't have intellectual curiosity to understand how people have built things, and you don't have your own personal why of why, what you're doing, why you're doing it, I don't think you can be successful.
We're going to stop it right there for now. Please dive into the next episode of the Sales Lab to hear the conclusion of this interview. And by the way, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and to rate this podcast on whatever app you use to listen. Also, share this with your colleagues and friends, and let's continue to have a deeper discussion on all things related to selling and sales leadership. See you next time in the Sales Lab.